This is Steve Robbins. Welcome to the Get It Done Guys quick and dirty tips to work less and do more. Today, I'm interviewing Sir John Hargrave, the author of Mind Hacking. It's a book about how you can rewrite the way your mind works. You can give yourself hope when you need it, courage when you need it, and dream bigger dreams than you ever thought possible. Join me in welcoming Sir John Hargrave. Mind hacking. First of all, I know that there are some in the technical world who know what that phrase means, but could you let us, the rest of us, know what is mind hacking? And I'm not thinking Hannibal Lecter here, I hope.
Right. So the idea is that your brain can be reprogrammed. Your brain can be reprogrammed like a computer. And if you're willing to accept this premise, then this book, Mind Hacking, really shows you how giving you specific tips and techniques, or hacks in the words of the early programmers, the original programmers, hacks to actually help you reprogram your mind.
Okay, well, so I'm going to start, and I'm going to say there's things in my mind I would really like to reprogram. Where do I start? How do I, what's the first thing I should do to get started with?
Yeah, so the very first step is becoming aware of your mind. And the simple kind of mind game that you can play right now is simply think about your mind. Just think about your mind. And when you do that,
my mind.
Your mind, your actual mind. And when you do that, you realize suddenly that there's a mind, and then there's something called you that can actually look at your mind. We call it super user mode in the book. It's like a programmer getting into this sort of higher level mode. And so becoming aware of the mind so that we can start to see these negative thoughts, these crazy things we tell ourselves all day, is the first step. And the tip, the specific technique that you can use is a game called What Was My Mind Just Thinking? So you can play this today for 24 hours. You just ask yourself as many times as possible, what was my mind just thinking? And you try to sort of catch your mind in the habit of thinking. And when you do that, you're pulling yourself up into that super user mode, but you're also starting to get this awareness. So like a computer programmer, you can start to look at that code or the programming that's running in your mind and then really start to tackle it and reprogram it for the better.
Interesting. Now, I'm currently taking a negotiation course at Harvard Law School. And one of the things they talk about, they say when you're going into a stressful negotiation where there's a lot of emotions involved, they say, go to the balcony where you're sort of observing your emotional reaction. Is that the same thing? Or
Love it. Yeah, I haven't heard that, but that's exactly the same concept. The technical term for this, Seaver, is called metacognition. And basically, you're thinking about your thinking. So you're kind of taking this meta view, getting one step above your head. So when I go into a negotiation, instead of this kind of anxiety running, like I'm going to fail, I'm going to get a bad end of this deal, I can start to get on top of that. As you say, go to the balcony, go into super user mode and start to say, wait a minute, mind, I don't have to think that. I don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe everything your mind tells you. And that's how you start to get in control and start to reprogram it with more positive thoughts.
Interesting. Okay, so you just gave a specific example there that was about if I'm like psyching myself out, as opposed to psyching myself up. If I'm psyching myself out before a negotiation, or maybe if I'm going to give a presentation, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to hate me or whatever. Is that the context where I want to start doing this? So first, I want to metacognition eyes.
That's a verb. So that's one area, but basically any area of your life where you're feeling areas of mental pain or friction. Those are the times when you know that there's a negative loop going on. There's negative programming that needs to be looked at and reprogrammed. So it could be things like anxiety, about work, or it could be frustration about your relationships, or it could be depression about the state of your life. So you're looking for those areas where you have like a persistent negative thought. And those are the thoughts that we can kind of debug, like a programmer debugs a computer, and then reprogram.
So could I do this if there's a person, for example, at work who I consistently clash with, or before they even come into my office, I'm already thinking, really, they're on their way down the hall now. Yeah. I can even use it for something like that?
Yeah, well, we all have those people in our lives, and you can't control another person, but when you're coming up with these negative loops. When you're learning to debug those loops, you're looking for the I statement. So the I statement would be like, I can't stand this woman because she makes me feel like this. Like, so the idea here is like, I get frustrated by her because. And then when you start to see that, you can then start reprogramming that with a more positive loop. And I'll give you a real example, which is, I run this content marketing company, and occasionally, not very often, sometimes we'll have difficult clients with our company. And I
imagine a consulting company with difficult clients. Who would have thought?
And I used to get really worked up by this, Steve. So it used to drive me crazy. And some people I would really obsess over, dealing with them. And now the way I look at these difficult folks is they're like my personal trainers. They're like my mind hacking coaches, because what they're doing is testing my mental resilience. And if I can go into those situations with these difficult people and I can maintain calm and poise and equanimity, then I have become a master. I've truly mastered my own mind. So that's how we can look at these difficult people in a more positive, constructive way.
So you're telling me they're your QA department?
Yeah, my bug testers.
So, okay. So the first thing you do is you become aware of your thoughts. You go to the balcony, right. You meditate. What then? Because it sounds like that's the preparation for, that's not how I actually debug my thinking, but I have to be able to do that in order to debug my thinking?
Yeah, so that's the first step, is you got to become aware of when those things are happening, when that woman at work is driving you crazy. And then next, you got to do this debugging technique. And we have a number of hacks in the book. One of them is called the 5 whys. And this comes from manufacturing, where when something goes wrong in your manufacturing plant, you don't just fire the person responsible, but you basically ask the question why 5 times, and you try to figure out the root problem or problems that caused that defect in the plant. And the same way, we can ask ourselves why 5 times and keep going back to the root of why this thought is so persistent or why this thing is such a problem in me. And then at that point, get to that statement, hopefully a 1-line statement that explains that negative thought loop that gets triggered in my head. So that debugging is the next step in the process.
So let's continue with the difficult. Let's go difficult with the difficult client example, since presumably you've actually done that one with yourself. So what were the 5 whys? What were you thinking when the difficult client came in, and when you asked the 5 whys, what were the layers of answers that came up?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So often it would be like, I know what I'm talking about, and this woman clearly doesn't. And that really bothers me. So again, you're trying to keep it focused on yourself, not on you can't control the other person, but I can control my reactions to her. So, why does that bother me that I know more than she did? Well, because she's not listening to me. Well, why does that bother me? You keep asking why. And it comes back to something like, loss of control. Like, I don't like to be not in control. I am a control freak. That's where it comes down to at the end of the day. Right. And so then once I've got that in a sentence, like, I don't like to lose control, I can then start to work on reprogramming that with a more positive loop. And there's lots of tools in the book for how do you construct the most optimized positive loop, in the same way the programmer, a good programmer, comes up with the most optimized, shortest, most concise line of code. And so for me, it might be something like, it's okay. I am teaching other people. So that might be my positive loop when I deal with this difficult woman. It's like, well, my job really is to help teach her. And if she's not going to learn on any given day, that's okay. Just like any teacher, I'm going to keep coming back and doing it. But that's kind of the approach for that reprogramming loop.
That's interesting. As I mentioned, I'm doing the negotiation program right now, and we do role plays. And we did a role play a couple nights ago where the person who I was negotiating with was the manager of a software project. And it just so happens that earlier in my career, I was a manager of software projects. And I've done a lot of executive coaching with managers of software projects. So I popped in to it is my job to help this manager of software project succeed, and nailed the negotiation. She basically suggested that I get everything I wanted. And I just remember walking away from that thinking, wow, now if only I could turn that same mode on when I'm negotiating for something in another context, because clearly I had all the right skills and attitudes and thoughts. Like, I'm a teacher. My job here is not to tell her what I want. My job is to really understand how the project is working and so on and so forth. So that seems very powerful to be able to shift perspectives in terms of what your approach is. How do you actually get that to stick?
That's it. You just nailed it. I mean, so it was your own mind. You hacked your own mind in that moment to say, here's the attitude I'm going to bring to this table. And it worked. And you can do that for any negotiation in any context. You can say, my goal is to make sure this person succeeds and that I also succeed. We can all win at this, basically. That's the attitude we're trying to go in with. And when I deal with difficult clients, a lot of what I do is I want to not only teach them, but help them succeed. That's my job. So if they're being difficult or obstinate and I fight and make it worse, I'm not doing my job. I am responsible for that. But if I work with it in order to get to success, then I'm doing my job. How we make it stick is we repeat it. We repeat it hundreds and thousands of times. And there's all kinds of techniques in the book. One of them is writing it down. There's a ton of research that shows that people who keep food diaries in which they write down everything lose weight more quickly and they keep it off faster than people who don't write it down. So writing down the things that we want to achieve and that idea of I'm here to get success, when you write it down, you commit it to paper, you can see it, it has tangible realness, and that is more likely to make it stick.
There's a lot more to the interview with Sir John. We discuss reality distortion fields, achieving the impossible, mental rehearsal, and how to join the free online mind hacking community. You can watch the full video at getitdoneguy.com/mindhacking, and you can download the full interview as an MP3 file. That's getitdoneguy.com/mindhacking. I'm Steve Robbins. I run webinars and seminars to help you be extraordinarily productive. If you want to know more, visit steverobbins.com. That's SteverRobbins.com. Work less, do more, and have a great life.